This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have what I believe is an unprecedented move by the Department of Justice. They are suing the entire district court bench in Maryland. Can you explain what's going on here?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. When I read this, I was like, that can't be true. Like, that's not a thing. The U.S. government doesn't get to sue the judges in the state of Maryland. But lo and behold, that's actually what they did. They brought a lawsuit in the name of the United States of America against all of the judges in the District Court of Maryland. And this, is the kind of thing that, in normal times would be front page news. It would actually be an impeachable offense. I mean, it would be so outrageous that there would be investigative reporters all over the place trying to get to the bottom of it. I mean, basically what's happened here is that the judges in the federal district court, these are life appointed, Senate confirmed federal judges, they have a standing rule that says that if someone seeks a habeas petition, because they are afraid, for example, they're going to be, deported out of the country to a foreign gulag, that there is automatically put in place a 2-day stay. What does that mean? It means that the United States can't ship these people to, South Sudan or Libya for 2 days while the judges have a chance to rule on the case. Now, that would strike most people as a completely sensible proposition, right? That the judges should have to do this. I mean, the way it struck me was, what kind of country have we become that judges need to have such
that this is even necessary in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, like in a normal judicial system, the Department of Justice does not try to front run federal judges hearing habeas cases. But after what we have seen, where in fact we have seen the Department of Justice play games and the Department of Homeland Security play games with trying to scurry people out of the country before they can have their habeas petitions filed and heard, this is a totally sensible thing. And rather than, maybe doing a little introspection about whether or not they have the right policy, rather than abiding by this policy and saying, we can wait 48 hours before we send someone into a gulag with no due process. No, they have filed this absolutely outrageous, unprecedented lawsuit.
And who adjudicates this case? When you sue the judges, isn't it the judges who are generally there to determine who wins a case? And so what happens when you sue judges?
Yeah, so the Department of Justice is seeking to also recuse all the judges so that they don't get to decide the case. I mean, it's Orwellian. It actually gives Orwellian kind of like a bad name. Right. I mean, it is, because it doesn't even like sort of pretend, Orwellian kind of connotes the idea that there's like a pretend, like, I think the Department of Justice and DHS and Donald Trump's White House right now, they don't even want to pretend. They have open contempt for the federal judiciary. By the way, I realize a little bit of an aside, but did you notice that he named his bombing run a war? It's almost like he's like, hey, Mike Johnson, fuck you. Right. Not only don't you have to declare war, I'm going to call it a war.
Right. So you have these Republicans saying like, oh, well, it was just, a specific action. It was just one strike. It wasn't actually war. And Trump is like, actually, it was a full-blown war, and I'm going to call it war every day from here on out.
Right. And I'm going to make you, Mike Johnson, call it a war from every day. Right. But anyway, so like, who will hear this? I mean, the Department of Justice would say it has to be a judge from another district. I hope the judges in Maryland don't put up with this nonsense and just summarily dismiss the lawsuit and say, basically, nobody here needs to hear this case because you don't get to sue us over our standing orders. If you want to challenge it, you do it in the context of an individual case where, someone files a habeas petition and you challenge the stay with the Court of Appeals. But, Donald Trump's administration doesn't want to do anything that even shows respect to the judiciary, which, is hopefully why Emile Beauvais won't get confirmed, although I don't count on Senate Republicans doing anything right there either.
If the Trump administration is trying to sue every judge in the district court bench in Maryland, what judges would be left? Would it be the appeals court judges?
Well, I mean, I personally don't think that the judges in Maryland should give in to this. I mean, this is kind of like the back and forth you and I have had literally going back to like Donald Trump's criminal trials and like the scheduling of them.
Right.
And I was like, all of the judges are too accommodating to this guy. Like
yeah.
even the ones we thought were the toughest ones, I thought went to, cut him too much slack.
So you reject the premise of the entire thing, that this shouldn't even get to a point where it gets in front of a judge to decide whether or not this case should even be humored in the courts in front of any judges.
Yeah, I think that this case should be treated like, look, every federal courthouse in America gets some number of frivolous crank filings.
Yeah.
They're usually random individuals who like send a letter in saying, I think that the radio waves are penetrating my brain and they're coming from your courthouse and you need to immediately be enjoined from doing it. And the chief judge will instruct the clerk to basically just ban it, dismiss it and take them off the docket. And I realize this is the Department of Justice, but this is a crank effort. This is like an effort by Donald Trump to assert authority he does not have through his sycophants, and I don't think they should hear it. Now, what will they do if they decide that they need to give every benefit of the doubt and respect the office and all of the stuff that drove me crazy earlier? Is they would appoint a judge from another district. So a judge from, for example, the Eastern District of Virginia or from Delaware or from Pennsylvania, and have one of them presumably consider the case in lieu of them. But again, I think that it's one of these things. You give Donald Trump that, you give him that respect that he doesn't deserve. You give the administration the patina of respect, and the next thing you know it, then they are exploiting that politically.
Right. I understand that every case that the Trump administration or the Department of Justice brings has to be taken kind of in a vacuum, in isolation, as far as these judges are concerned. But when you have an administration that is so overtly hostile, and shows so much disrespect to the federal judiciary as it stands right now, like with this decision to try and sue the entire federal bench in Maryland, does that have any impact when the DOJ then brings cases in front of these judges, or are their opinions not colored whatsoever and they continue to just take all of these individual cases in isolation, and it has zero bearing on how they might on the goodwill that they might confer to the DOJ?
Yeah, so I think there are three components or three answers to that. Number one, it can't help but color judges are human beings.
Right, they're human, yeah.
But have some emotional impact. Number two, the judges would say it has no bearing, right? Because their job is to treat each case as it's, under the rule of law,
right,
and the like. The third is really what I've been arguing for, which is kind of a variant of that, which is, yes, every case has to be judged on its merits, and the Department of Justice is entitled to fair process, just like any other litigant. But I do believe judges need to take into account the totality of what they are seeing going on nationwide. And they should be taking into account in that if they see the Department of Justice is lying to other federal judges, it doesn't mean that the Department of Justice doesn't get a chance to make its case. But I do think it means that judges should not be bending over backwards to believe everything the Department of Justice says. I've written about this. You and I have talked about this. There is this doctrine called the presumption of regularity, which means that when the federal government comes in and says a fact is a fact, it is generally believed. When they say that there's a good reason why we are deporting these people, they are generally believed. They're given a presumption that what they are doing is on the up and up, that what they're doing is in good faith. And that's a presumption that no other litigant gets. Everyone else starts with the scales balanced. The government starts with the scales presumed a little in their favor. And I just think that has to be taken away. And I think that stunts like this deserve to go on that scale and saying, you know what, I'm not going to assume that the Department of Justice gets the benefit of the doubt. I'll give them a fair shake, but I'm not going to give them more than that. And that's where I hope we are going to move to.
Right. They are basically coasting off of the goodwill and honesty of departments of justice for, hundreds of years and basically exploiting it because this Department of Justice is not acting in good faith. This Department of Justice is perfectly content to exploit the law, to defy court rulings, to do whatever they have to do to kowtow to, whatever lunatic edicts are falling out of Donald Trump's face. But as far as the courts are concerned, they continue to confer all of this goodwill onto to the DOJ because that's been their reputation for so long, even though it's completely undeserved by this administration. Has there been any indication or instances where federal judges are beginning to realize that they don't deserve the goodwill that the DOJ is coasting off of in the cases that you've seen thus far?
Yeah, I think, by the way, it's a little bit worse than even the way you describe it, because it's not just the good faith of the Department of Justice. It's the good faith of the presidency. Yeah. It's the good faith of the Department of Homeland Security. It's the good faith, right? It is. I mean, a lot of these cases go back, by the way, like, for example, to FDR and the New Deal, where he was like, look, we're in a national depression. I have really good reasons why I have to do this thing. Or we are now in World War II. There are really good reasons why I have to do this thing. And the courts were like, okay, look, we're going to assume that the president and his cabinet officials are acting in the best interest of the country. And so it's beyond just the DOJ. Now, is that eroding? I think we see in individual cases, in individual judges where they feel lied to or they feel misled. Yeah, I think it's eroding. But, for every time I say we are taking that step forward, we wind up with the Ninth Circuit decision involving the National Guard, which was a really big step back. I mean, it was like not just a step back, it was like a sprint back, in which you have the Ninth Circuit saying, well, if Donald Trump thinks that there's a rebellion and that the ability of the federal law enforcement and federal agencies to do their job is under threat, he can invoke the National Guard. And, he said, after all, he said that there were bottles thrown at federal agents. He said this. And you had to suspend reality to say that what Donald Trump was saying there was on the up and up, and that it wasn't just an effort to intimidate blue cities, which, by the way, he then posted on social media was his reason for doing it. And so I think that was a really big step back. So are we seeing some judges? Yeah, I would say that Judge Breyer, for example, in California, applied a healthy dose of skepticism. But then you saw the Ninth Circuit give Donald Trump every possible reading of his actions that defy common sense, but give him the benefit of the doubt.
Well, we will, of course, stay on top of this issue as it relates to the DOJ's ongoing effort to sue the entire federal bench in Maryland. As soon as we have any update, we'll bring it to you. I know that, Mark, you're also covering
this. And just imagine, by the way, Brian, if he gets away with this, okay, this is kind of like why I draw it in my head to the situation in California, because you and I talked about this. If he can do the National Guard there, he will do the National Guard in every blue city and every blue state, right? If he can get away with suing the entire federal bench in Maryland, and recuse them and intimidate them from hearing cases, why can't he do that in every federal court?
Correct.
Everything he does in every state.
Everything he does is a test case to be able to export his policies to the rest of the country, and that's how we should view them. And again, you have been, a leader in terms of bringing this out into the spotlight and covering this stuff. For everybody who's watching right now, highly recommend, if you're not yet subscribed to Democracy Docket, which is Mark's YouTube channel. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Go ahead and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, completely free, but it helps support him and his team. And this is exactly the voices that we need getting into the political zeitgeist right now. So again, that link is right here on the screen and also in the post description. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.